On this episode, pop in a VHS tape because we are going to die in 7 days. No, wait, that can't be right. That's not... George, that's not the intro I wrote.
SEGA Bits presents SEGA Talk, a podcast talking all things SEGA! With your hosts, George and Barry.
Look, it's a giant talking egg. I'm not talking to you. I'm talking to the master here. So what?
Hello and welcome to episode 120 of SEGA Talk Podcast. I'm Barry, and with me is creepy crawly, wet Willie George.
Wet Willie? Yeah, hi everyone.
Well, the girl in the game is always like soaking wet.
Like a well, right?
Yeah, she does. So if you can't tell, we are talking about The Ring, specifically The Ring Terror's Realm for the Dreamcast. And this episode, it's a strange pick for the spring summer time. I mean, it's hot as hell outside, and
right.
We're talking about a spooky movie game. But maybe our Patreon picker will explain to us in their memories why they picked this game. And hey, George, what is a Patreon picker, and how can these people become one?
So there's a little website called patreon.com/SegaBits. If you guys go check it out, you guys could be a picker for as low as $20. That means you get your memories read in the beginning. If you pledge $1, you get the audio version of the podcast early, and you get your memories read in the end of the podcast. $5 gives you the video version of it early. So there's a lot of tiers, so check it out at patreon.com/SegaBits.
That's right. And before we get to Michael's memories, I'm going to kick off the Sode proper. So, The Ring Terror's Realm, also known as Ring in Japan, or Ringu, is a survival horror. Ringu. Yeah. Ringu Star.
Is that like a real word though in Japan, or did they just like take the American ring word and put a U in there?
Well, we're actually going to cover that. It's a survival horror video game created and published by Asmik Ace Entertainment in Japan and published by Infogrames North America in North America. The game was released for Dreamcast on February 24th, 2000 in Japan and September 29th in North America. However, the North American release was originally scheduled to come out June 28th, and for whatever reason, it was delayed. So, us recording this and releasing it in June is actually fitting, because that's the original release date that never happened. It is based on Suzuki Koju's Ring novel series, which served as the inspiration for the Japanese film Ring in 1998 and the American adaptation The Ring in 2002. So let's see why Michael S. picked this game. He says, recently I've been watching a lot of horror movies, including J-horror like Ju-on, Dark Water, and Ringu. This made me remember having this game for the Dreamcast. I found it, put it on, and wow, this is a terrible mess. The opening cutscene is hilariously bad. I played about an hour, and the constant terrible music played on a loop along with not much happening and made me give up. I thought, where is the horror? Where's the scary girl with the hair in her face? Or any similarity to the Ringu movies. And George, before we were recording, I was doing my best AVGN impression, going, "What a shitload of fuck this game is. I'd rather dip my balls in a VCR." And it seems like Michael was feeling that same way. Though I really hope he didn't snap the game in half, because this game actually sells for over $100 right now, which is,
keep it,
as the nerd would say, a shitload of fuck. And we can swear on this episode because it's an M-rated game. That's my rule.
Oh, that's a good rule.
That's a good rule, because if they swear in the game, it's a violent game. Then we can swear in the episode. So George, what are your memories of The Ring? Did you see any of the movies, or even learn Japanese to read the novel? And did you play this shitty game?
Wow, I didn't play the game. Like I said before to you, I didn't even know this game existed. It's kind of like surprising that it's even like, if I saw this at the store, I wouldn't even think it's related to The Ring, the movie or the novel. I've never read the novel. I did watch the American movie, which was kind of hard to like miss back in the day because it was advertised everywhere, and it was one of those movies that was like, this thing is so scary it'll like haunt you for the rest of your life or whatever. And it was like Blair Witch Project, where it was like you find this tape concept. So I guess it got really popular here. I didn't find the movie too scary, but I do remember a bunch of girls at school would always do the hair thing where they put the hair to the front. And,
yeah, that was popular.
And when I had long hair, I did the same thing because it was funny. I just know it was iconic because the girl with the hair over her face. And it's crazy that just that little move of the hair being over the face creeped so many people out.
Yeah.
Are you surprised about that? Like, it became iconic.
It is a scary premise to have, like, static on your TV and then something shows up that you didn't expect to see climb out of your TV. I mean, you put the VHS tape in, so you're expecting to watch something. But, yeah, it's a unique premise. I saw the first American movie. I think I saw the Japanese version. I never saw the sequels, though. And I'll be honest, I really tried to play this game. I tried burning it a couple methods, and it wasn't working for me. I actually have 2 Dreamcasts. Well, I have 3, but 2 that I utilize. Wow. Yeah. Well, you can see them there, right? I got my Sega Sports one back there, and then I got my white Japanese one. And they weren't reading the disc. I think I need to burn a different version of it. But maybe that's good, kind of like with The Ring. Like, you copy the VHS tape and you spread the virus, so maybe if I copy the game, that's actually more interesting than the game itself. Is the idea of burning a copy of the Ring video game and then dying in 7 days. But yeah, so I mean, I it's one of those franchises that just is kind of there for me. I don't love it. I don't own anything from it, but I do recognize that it had a huge impact. It really did bring Japanese horror to the West. So in that regard, it's a massive deal. It's like the Godzilla of horror movies, right? Like, Godzilla made giant monster movies a staple here. And now this thing comes over, and like, you're going to have mainstream people going to mainstream movies that are inspired by Japanese horror films, which you never would have thought would happen. So, before we dive into the game, let's take a quick look at the novels that served as the inspiration. So, the franchise originated from Koji Suzuki's novel Ring, which was actually published in 1991 and marked the beginning of a trilogy. The subsequent installments included Spiral in 1995, which has no connection to the Saw movie Spiral, which I thought was kind of interesting, and Loop in 1998, which has no connection to the elevated train line that runs through Chicago. So there's no connection there. Building upon the success of the initial trilogy, additional novels set in the Ring universe were released. Those include Birthday in 1999, which encompasses a prequel to Ring, and an epilogue to Loop. So the book kind of it bookends the trilogy, basically, and it reveals the fate of a pivotal character from Spiral. Furthermore, there was S in 2012 and Tide in 2013, which expanded the narrative scope of the franchise. And we're going to forego reading through the plot of every novel, but if you're wondering, yes, the cursed videotape from the films is the source of everybody's troubles in the novels. The creepy girl from the tape is named Sadako Yamamura, who had telekinetic powers in life. So she's really kind of like Eleven from Stranger Things. The creepy girl is revealed to have been, I guess her doctor was infatuated with her. And he takes her into the woods, and I'll omit this part, but in turn, from what he did to her, he injures her, infects her with smallpox, and also learns in this moment that Sadako was intersex, which means has both, I guess, reproductive organs. And then the doctor threw Sadako down a well and crushed her with rocks. And
that's a weird interest, I guess. I mean, All right. Sounds like a. All right. I was gonna say the cover for the first book is so awesome. The book, the art for it. I don't know if you've seen the Ring cover.
Mm-hmm.
Very cool art. And then I think it goes like Spiral has pretty cool art too. But then they kind of go away from that motif in the covers. That's kind of weird, but yeah.
Yeah, it's
Because I'm showing them on the.
Yeah, the books are cool. I wonder if they're collectible. So in the novel, the main character is a reporter named Kazuyuki Asakawa, who believes that Sadako's rage and psychic powers projected themselves onto the tape, and thinks that giving Sadako's remains a proper burial will put her spirit to rest and end the curse. So, long story short, they find the body at the bottom of the well, they bury the body, and then apparently the curse is lifted. However, Asakawa's friend, Ryuji Takayama, who also had seen the tape, dies. And Asakawa realizes that she actually copied the tape and gave it to him, which was why she was saved and she passed the curse on to him, because he didn't copy the tape. And what's learned is that the smallpox virus that she was infected with before being killed was what had basically transferred itself and her spirit onto this tape. And copying it. Yeah, so copying it is the only cure. So basically, in the end of the book, she tells everyone who has seen it to copy the tape. And it's cool. It's kind of weird.
It kind of reminds me of those chain letters they used to send, right? Where you're like, send this to 7 more people or you'll die next month.
Well, that's what it's playing up on. It's also kind of like the, turn off the lights and look in the mirror and say a name 3 times. Like this sort of idea of this spirit that they are bound to something, like a mirror or a tape or something. She's not a ghost so much as it's a imprint of her dead body living on this tape. So that's why burying the body doesn't do anything, because she's dead. It's a version of her rage combined with the smallpox virus. Right. But what I didn't get was the intersex thing. I kind of feel like it's the author just trying to be like, oh, and they were a little different. And I don't know. I think that's kind of shitty. It doesn't seem like that plays into anything outside of maybe the doctor, being disgusted that they had this, crush on a girl that was, different, which is kind of he already...
Yeah, he's already done, the most, horrific act, and then it's and intersex. It's what?
Right.
It's out of nowhere. Yeah. It's okay.
Yeah, I don't think that carried over into the films. I could be wrong.
I don't remember it in the films at all.
But, yeah, so... but I guess now that we're going in the order of release, the next release would be 1998's Japanese film Ring, also known by otaku as Ringu. And oddly, the movie is actually just called The Ring in Japan, but in America, they changed the title to Ringu. And
really?
To me, that's like Sonic the Hedgehog being released in the USA, and they title it Sonicu the Hedgehog.
Right.
It's
too much.
This movie's from Japan. Can't you tell? We called it Ringu. And that's kind of weird. Don't you think it's weird that they changed the title to I guess it's the Romaji for Ring? Why would you do that?
I don't know. It's weird. Wow, yeah, you're right. They did. And so, wait. In Japan, it was actually not Ringo. It was just Ring. Like the American
Ring or the Ring, yeah. And so I think the only reason they did it was that it likely was released after the American film, right. And so they had to differentiate. So they were they made it super Japanesey. Now, what they could have called it is The Ring, and then colon, the original Japanese thriller or something like that. That would have been a little better. When The Office, the British Office came to America, they originally titled it The Office in American Workplace. So they were very clearly saying oh no, this is a remake, So yeah, I don't know. I think that's I remember as
just add a U in The Office for the British version.
The Office.
No, not in the end. I'm saying just randomly in there, like they do for color and other words. So it'd be OUFF, The Office.
Maybe Sonic Colors, I guess, is an example. But yeah, I think that's all they did. But I remember as a 20-something, I thought, that's really fucking lame. Like, I was aware that it was just called The Ring, and I'm like, they're trying to appeal to, like, Japanese, like, otaku in America who are like, oh, have you seen Ringu? And I'm like, no, I'm not going to watch Ringu. That sounds fucking stupid. So, shortly after the movie's release, the video game followed, and that's the episode. Thanks for watching. No, it was released to the Dreamcast, as mentioned, on February 24th, 2000 in Japan and September 29th in North America. The Ring Terror's Realm was developed by Asmik Ace Entertainment. And Asmik was a video game developer founded in 1985 as a subsidiary of Sumitomo. I think everything in Japan's a subsidiary of something.
Right.
In 1998, they merged with Ace Entertainment to form Asmik Ace Entertainment, and they renamed to Asmik Ace in 2012, so long time after this. The Sega softography is quite odd. It mainly consists of ports of Sega arcade games and licensed titles, which I guess fits with Ring, but if you look at least their Sega output, it seems like The Ring is their most ambitious project. On the Mega Drive, they did Super Hydlide, Air Driver. On the Saturn, they did Civilization, World Evolution Soccer, Lupin the Third, which I'm looking at here now. It seems like it's an action game. So I guess the Lupin the Third game, looking at the screenshots, is actually probably the closest thing they did to Ring, because it looks like it's a 3D action game. And then they also did PC Engine ports of Shinobi and Power Drift, which was unreleased. So
right. Well, it says one was released in 1990, but one was unreleased. What's up with that? Like, they had one version.
I don't know. It is very weird. I don't know why one's released and one's unreleased. I actually looked into that, and it was kind of confusing. However, outside of Sega output, Asmik Ace was pretty prolific, so their primary focus was the NES, but after the release of The Ring, the company shifted their focus to distributing films, and their most notable client is DreamWorks. So Asmik Ace has actually distributed most of the live-action and animated DreamWorks films in Japan. So it's actually a happy ending for them, at least the executives, because it's like, do you want to make shitty licensed video games for the Dreamcast, or do you want to make big money just doing the bare minimum by localizing DreamWorks films, which, like, make money? So,
right,
like Shrek. I guess maybe they handled Shrek, which is kind of funny.
Can you imagine, like, the amount of work they had to go in for a cult classic like Shrek in Japan to, like, get it 100%? It has so much American culture in it. Like, how do you even do that? Especially, like, I want to see the Japanese version of, like, the All Stars song from Smash Mouth, which is a American anthem.
Yeah, it is odd. I know South Park was actually, I think, really popular in Japan. They localized it and put in Japanese humor, whereas I think The Simpsons was localized and they did very little, like, adapting, and so it did not do so well. I don't think the show even ran to today. I think they stopped at a certain point, which is kind of wild to me. Like, I know this sounds super like, not small-minded, but just it surprises me sometimes to think, wow, there's, like, whole parts of the world where The Simpsons, like, does not exist to them. You know what I mean? Like, whole continents where they're like, I think I've seen that guy. What is that? And you're like, oh my god, it's The Simpsons. Do they have? But do they have a thing where they're like, oh, it's the Zemeti Zabalobo, and you're like, oh, it's the Zemeti Zabalobo, and they're like, oh my god, you don't know?
You're an idiot. Yeah. I remember being in Mexico and everyone used to watch it. So The Simpsons there, like, they were really good. I thought the dub was done really well.
Oh yeah, that's huge. Yeah, Spanish language Simpsons is huge. Yeah. Like, I think the voice actor for Homer or something passed away.
Oh, did it?
And it was like one of the major voice actors. It was a huge fucking deal. Yeah. So and that's like a completely different thing. But anyway.
Yeah.
Shrek and The Ring have a little connection there, which I think is kind of
A
funny.
crossover would be great.
Exactly. Oh my god, I'd love... You know what? That would probably make this game a lot better if you did, like, character swaps and it was like Shrek.
Right.
But let's get some beautiful gameplay footage going. This comes courtesy of That's a Game? I think it's like a podcast. It's a podcast that talks about video games, and they talked about The Ring. What a bunch of idiots!
Yeah,
who does that?
Phew.
They did this Honest Piranha Labs Productions. So this is from a couple of years ago, but we thank them for their service. So we'll have this playing while we chit-chat over the game. So despite both the Ring novel and movie sharing a story, the video game goes in a very, very different direction.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm going to have to do a shout-out to the website Bloody Disgusting. It's a horror movie news website because they do really good retrospective on horror video games, especially unknown ones. And they usually actually give you the plot of the game in a lot more details than just like, boy, it's just a shitload of fuck game. You know, like the plot synopsis for this game pretty much exists as the same paragraph on every wiki entry I've seen, except for this article where they actually get a little more in depth. So the plot, it's going to get weird. So recently employed by the CDC, yes, the American CDC in the United States, Meg Rainman encounters a Rainman, not connected to Dustin Hoffman.
That's what I was going to say, Dustin Hoffman's daughter.
Oh my god, that'd be a good movie, Rainman versus The Ring.
Oh man, it would be.
And he's like, I gotta watch TV at 3:45, and it's like, Raymond, the ring lady's crawling out of your TV, and he's like, oh no.
That'd be great.
Here we go. And he'd drop things, and then he'd have to count them. It'd be great. So yeah, Meg Rainman encounters a perplexing situation as her boyfriend Robert, along with 3 other CDC's employees, perish under mysterious circumstances on the very same day. The sole common thread linking their deaths is the presence of a program named Ring, discovered on their computers.
Well, so it's on a tape.
It's a computer program.
Okay,
so,
first one to be X. It should have been a Dreamcast game, but no. You're making a Dreamcast game, so the idea of being meta, you played this game called The Ring on the Dreamcast, would have been better, but yeah.
Right. And then, yeah. So as the CDC undergoes a strict lockdown, Meg becomes trapped alongside her colleagues within the facility, and she is determined to unravel the mysteries surrounding Robert's demise and the Ring program. Terror's Realm recaps the events of Ringu in 1990 and acts as a recap of Sadako Yamamura's life. There are nods to the novel that inspired the films, as well as footage, but the game kind of barely connects to them. Terror's Realm does reveal how the videotape has evolved into a virus which worked itself into the Ring video game. So essentially, this is in real time, 9 years later, 9 or 10 years later, and the Ring videotape has spread so far that it got into a computer and manifested itself into a video game.
Right. Why
the
is
CDC,
a bad video game?
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, it makes sense. Do you think a Monster Ghost would be a good developer?
Right. No, I guess you're right. Never mind.
Which actually makes this game really good because it's realistic, at least.
One girl doing all this?
Well, listen to this. So the CDC is actually in possession of Sadako's body, and they're using it to make a vaccine for her curse. And which is weird. It's a spiritual curse, but you get a shot. And then they're like, "Don't worry, you got immunity now."
Yeah, you got the spirit shot.
And this builds to the revelation that Sadako had built a virtual world that Meg gets stuck in. And in the third act of the story, you actually get to watch the actual videotape using footage from the films. They even use clips from
the Japanese one, right?
The Japanese ones, yeah. So they use clips from Ring 1 and Ring 2, which had already released at this time in Japan. And it shows additional footage. You get to see Sadako's mother. Sadly, Sadako does not appear as an enemy until the very end of the game, so you're kind of stuck with these weird virtual world mutants, which are like manifestations of hers. So why do you think they changed the plot so dramatically? What do you think of that?
I mean, they're trying to make it a Resident Evil type game. When you look at the footage, it has the tank controls and you walk super slow. So the idea of like you being in the city and investigating stuff probably wouldn't work. The budget, I'm pretty sure this half part of this game was already made before they got the Ring license, in my opinion. And I think they kind of had to work around it because
That's possible.
Because like a lot of the like it looks like a space game. Like everyone's wearing leather and these weird glasses. So they probably just like wrote the story around it. That's what I think. Because none of the scenery looks like Japan. It's just like a dirty old building.
Well, it's in America, which is surprising because this is before the American version of the Ring. So it's like the first time the Ring went to America was actually in the video game, which is a continuation of the film story, but very loosely. And I would agree with you on this being like a different game that they just turned into the Ring, but nothing in the developer's gameography tells me that they make original content. It's either ports or licensed stuff. So honestly, I think they probably just they knew they were making a Ring video game, but they probably wanted to like have it be a video game rather than a VHS tape. You know what I mean? So they were probably like, well, storyboard session. How does the Ring become a video game? The VHS tape becomes a computer virus, and it's called Ring. Cool, done.
Are you surprised that this was like a Dreamcast exclusive? Because like the graphics,
yeah.
Because like I've never heard of it, first of all, and it's like still trying to be like the old Resident Evil 2 or Resident Evil 1 type, where it's like this. I guess Code Veronica was kind of the same. So, but I don't know. The graphics look like a PS1 game in a way, or more Nintendo 64.
Right. Well, remember they did have experience developing for the Saturn, and they did make that Lupin the Third game. So it's possible they like built off of that.
I can see.
But
that.
it is. I mean, it's original. It's just like it's so disconnected. I almost kind of equate it to Jason X, if you've ever seen that. It's when
it's a great movie.
Friday the 13th went to outer space. But that's 10 movies in, and they actually have a plausible reason for Jason to be in outer space. It's basically the distant future. He can never die, and they find his frozen body. And it's actually really... I mean, it's a stupid movie, but it's really cool.
Right. It's a hilarious movie. It's like everything about that movie is hilarious.
Right, but this game, what I find so interesting is the story feels like something that would happen now in like 2023. Right. Like, oh man, they've made the Ring movies and movies and books since 1990. What are they going to do 30 years later? And it's like, oh, it's a video game. And I'd be like, that makes sense. That's fine. But here it's like the very first video game to feature the Ring, and it's this, which is so bizarre. There's no characters from the books. They're Americans. Let's talk about the characters. I don't have pictures because there isn't much content out there, but we had Meg. She's the protagonist and the main character. This is crazy. So she takes Robert's position at the CDC after he dies at the start of the game. In what situation would you take your boyfriend's or girlfriend's like job immediately? They're like, oh, you're mourning, but you have the exact same skills, so we're going to hire you. And I posted it up on our Twitter, but it's like her introduction. She's just smiling. She's like, it's my first day. My boyfriend died in this job, you know.
You think she killed him?
Well, no.
Like,
so
who benefited? Her?
Well, Robert now, he was a researcher. He was working on the virus. And he and 3 of his colleagues actually died in this like virtual world.
And so they hired her then. So they hired her. Oh my god, that's terrible.
Yeah, there's
who okayed this plot to begin with? I'd be like, okay, first of all, this is not how it works. Like, after your boyfriend dies, you're not like, can I get a government job? It's like, okay,
right. Well, they vet you for those positions, and they'll say like, so how do you know the deceased? Yeah, he was my boyfriend. He was killed on the job just days ago. And they'd be like, that seems like a conflict of not even a conflict of interest, but just like a conflict because you're mourning him and you're coming in like, we feel like you might investigate his death instead of just like work his job.
Right.
Other characters include the memorable Jack Nixon, not Jack Nicholson, who's a reporter and neighbor to Meg and Robert. There's John Brad, which is a guy with 2 first names, who's the boss at the CDC. Chris, memorable Chris, the co-worker at the CDC, who works on the ground floor. Kathy is a co-worker, and she looks like Tina Turner. And she likes to cause trouble and is the girlfriend of Lucchino, who is the security chief. Interestingly, what?
Everybody that's dating each other works in the CDC. Like, it's just the big old relationship fest over there, right?
Exactly. And it's interesting, too. So the security chief, the wiki makes a point, the Ring wiki, to say he has 6 piercings, 2 on each ears and 1 on the nose and 1 on the left eye. Eye piercing. I don't know what that is. And then finally there's Timothy, who's an old doctor working at the CDC. So let's talk gameplay. So if you've played Resident Evil, you should probably know how the game plays out. But how you get there is pretty weird. So basically, upon viewing the Ring program, Meg is transported to an alternate dimension where she looks like a character straight out of the Matrix and battles Resident Evil-type creatures. She then will return to the real world, and the rest of the game sees Meg crossing between our world, where she talks to NPCs at the CDC, NPCDC, and then the virtual world where she's like in the Matrix killing creatures and collecting keys, like weapons. So, I actually thought the concept of 2 worlds is pretty cool because this predates the Matrix. But I don't think it's implemented right. But can you think of some other games that have like a 2-world sort of gameplay situation
Persona?
where you... Okay.
Yeah, Persona
name some more.
has... I'm trying to think of other ones. Virtual Quest. Remember that one?
Virtua
Quest.
What is that?
The really bad one.
Yeah.
where
Virtual Quest
you go
has
into
that.
like a video game, right?
Seventh Dragon Code VFD, which we recently talked about.
Right.
It's not really 2 worlds, but Kingdom Hearts Dream Drop Distance, you switch between 2 characters on a timer, which I thought was really innovative. I thought that was cool.
That's pretty good. That's a pretty good list. I'm trying to think of
and
other
then
ones.
I think your items carry over or something, like your progress affects the other one. I thought that was a really cool game.
Almost every single Atlas RPG now has a two world system thing. Like, I played Soul Hackers 2 not that long ago, and it was like you go to the Soul Matrix. So I mean, Atlas games basically do it a lot. But yeah,
Sonic Generations, kind of like you can switch on the fly between playing modern and classic. But unfortunately, the Ring Terror's Realm doesn't really handle this too well. The real world is clunky and slow and kind of boring.
Right.
Talking to CDC employees. The virtual world is weird. Like I said, you look like a character out of the Matrix. You fight Resident Evil style creatures instead of the Ring girl.
right. Is she even in this thing outside of the movies?
She is. She's the last boss, and I won't spoil it. Maybe I'll mention it in a little bit.
I was going to skip all the way to the end because I've already skipped through it, and it was like she has a like samurai sword. I was like, that's so sick.
I'll spoil it now. I don't really touch on it. So yeah, she is the last boss, and from what I remember, she does kind of like she's dying, but she's like, the world will suffer, like kind of like D2 or something, you know, where it's just kind of like a downer.
Right.
And then she dies or something. But so what's weird is that in the Ring, she's not a real creature. She's a imprint on a videotape that you can never truly get rid of.
Right.
But in this, she's like both that and like a real creature that can die. It's very odd. Mentioning that Resident Evil gameplay, so the game cameras are fixed. The UI looks straight out of Resident Evil. Like, there's nothing really to talk about here in terms of that. You use the D-pad to move, which I hate Dreamcast games that use the D-pad exclusively. Didn't Shenmue do that?
Yeah, I think so. And then they use the
I love
joystick.
Shenmue, but I hated that.
Right.
And if you want to get anywhere fast, you have to use the run button, which I believe is like X. I prefer when they did the triggers for running in Dreamcast games. That was a little easier. Collision detection's terrible. So coupled with the cameras and the controls, you can imagine how bad it gets. Sound and dialogue, translation's pretty weak. There's obvious spelling errors, and the voice actors are forgettable, and the music is not only forgettable, but it loops like crazy, and I think Michael at the top of the show said he didn't like it, so no one's going to be downloading the soundtrack for this game. And honestly, there's not too much to say when it comes to gameplay. Like, think Resident Evil, but it's unpolished and bland. Yeah. So, George, instead of talking more about this shitty game, I want to hear your idea, and then I'll pitch mine, for a proper The Ring video game. And you could have VHS tapes, you could borrow elements from this. Pitch it to me. I'm the CEO, and I'm here.
So I think what made the Ring a little interesting was that I thought it was, I didn't even know it was a book, so it used the medium that you were already watching as a horror element. So back then people were still using VHS. VHS is older technology, so like the fact that this girl would record on a DVD would be absurd. She's like, I'm imprinted on a DVD that just came out 2 years ago, and they were super expensive, and not everyone could buy. So the idea that you put any VHS on and it could haunt you made you rethink putting a VHS, those random, because back in the day we had those ones that you recorded, and anything could be on there, and you would be able to go to people's houses and put random VHS tapes and see what they recorded off the TV sometimes. So I guess I could see the horror element in that. As a Dreamcast game, I think they should play up the fact that this Dreamcast game you bought was haunted, and use features of the Dreamcast uniquely to be randomly put little images of the Ring Girl in your memory card, VMU slot, etc. Stuff like that.
Yeah, that was a GameCube game, right? That did that.
I don't know if they did that. I know that Metal Gear Solid did that a lot, playing with the features.
What was that GameCube game where you'd play it and then it would look like memory card damaged, or it would switch to Video 4? Do you remember that?
I don't remember that. No, I don't.
It was. I played it with some friends. It was really cool.
Beyond Good and Evil, maybe?
No, it would fuck with you though while you played it. It would be like, you'd be like, oh, my memory card got deleted, or the game froze, and then suddenly there's a jump scare. I think that's a great idea. Yeah, that would be really cool. My idea, if you're going to be using the VHS tapes and really keep it into the story of the novels and the movies, is that maybe this is 10 years later and the video has spread a lot, and maybe it starts to be uploaded to the internet as digital files, and it carries just as much power, if not more. And maybe there's sort of a it turns people into echoes of her, where they appear as her. You know what I mean? So you're not only avoiding her, but you're fighting and trying to save people who have been infected by her. So it's a little 28 Days Later, Rage Virus sort of thing. And maybe it has a puzzle game element to it, where I'm reminded of those cooking games where it's you got to keep all the burners on and do this and that, and maybe you have to keep people from seeing the footage. So there's sort of spinning plates sort of thing where you're oh, the NPC is gonna go put the tape in, you better go stop him. I mean, it's kind of lame, but I could see something there.
They should have just added light guns D or whatever. Just because, why not? Because I think light gun shooting is funner than whatever this gameplay is that I'm looking at. It's just the Resident Evil gameplay. I don't know. If it's done right, it could be fun. When it's done really badly, and there's so many bad Resident Evil clones back in the day, it's so bad. It's so bad.
So, yeah, and I mean, as you mentioned, Resident Evil, so the Dreamcast, they had their own Resident Evil game, the beloved Code Veronica.
Right.
There were also ports of Resident Evil 2 and 3, and then there were,
rare.
They are rare. I have, I think, 3, and then a local shop also had 2, but they wanted $80 for it. There's lesser-known games like Blue Stinger, Carrier, Illbleed, D2, Alone in the Dark, The New Nightmare, Shadow Man, Dino Crisis, and Evil Dead, Hail to the King. So where would you rank the Ring Terror's Realm amongst all those that I just mentioned? Like, would it be bottom of the barrel?
I haven't played it, but from what I see, probably bottom of the barrel. And it's funny because I remember when the Dreamcast came out and everyone was on... a lot of people at school were like talking about Blue Stinger, like it was the greatest game in the world. I mean, it's hard for me to go, oh yeah, everyone buy Blue Stinger when we had like Sonic and we had Power Stone and we had a few other games where you're like, come on. But this game definitely looks worse than Blue Stinger. At least Blue Stinger had a original idea. I don't know. I hate the idea that you work at the CDC. It's like, can you imagine a game where you're like, I'm trying to think of a horror movie, the Terrifier movie, the slasher movie, right? Or Nightmare on Elm Street, but you work at the post office. It's like, what? Why are you in the post office? But yeah. Right.
Like, I mean, and like I said, like, this feels like a story that would come after several sequels, and you're like, oh, okay, I get why we got here. Like the Saw movies. Like, you look at the very first Saw movie, and you look at the latest one, and it's different characters, kind of different setting, but it makes sense, because you're like, oh, I see the through line. Like, we've had enough of these characters. We got here. But this, it's just, yeah, it's odd. And I mean, amongst those games, so I'm just going to go through them real quick. Code Veronica, excellent game. Resident Evil 2 and 3 ports, they're fine. They're good games. Blue Stinger has its fans. Yeah, Carrier. Have you played Carrier?
I have not played that one yet.
I need to play. I don't know if I own it. Illbleed, it's weird, it's doofy, but it's fun. D2, we love D2 here. Alone in the Dark, The New Nightmare, I don't know how that one is. Have you played that?
I played a little bit of it. I didn't like it, but maybe I'm wrong. Have you ever, like, Alone in the Dark is one of those weird franchises that, like, everyone's heard of a game, but, like, I've never heard anyone say, Alone in the Dark is one of the best games I've ever played.
It's just a game, right?
They're making a new one. Like, it was announced not that long ago, but it's kind of hard. It got overshadowed by, I think, the Resident Evil 4 remake.
Well, speaking of Shadow, there's also Shadow Man, which I own, and I haven't really played that much, but I love how it has a map inside of it. Like, I just think that's so cool.
I think they have like a new Steam version of Shadow Man, kind of like D or whatever. It's weird.
There's a like Shadow Man fandom out there. It's really cool. Dino Crisis, which is, you know, it's the closest you get to a Resident Evil game, and it plays really well. And then I would say the Ring Terror's Realm is probably on par with Evil Dead, Hail to the King. Like, they're both bad horror survival games. However, Evil Dead is a little better because it has Bruce Campbell, and, like, it's a little funny. Like,
I actually tried to beat that game. It is a Resident Evil 2 clone, right? Is that the Resident Evil clone one?
But right? The thing is like, it's a continuation of, like, it has the main character, so you can't fault it for that. At least with that, like, you think Evil Dead, you think Bruce Campbell, he's the star of the game, whereas the Ring Terror's Realm, you're like, where's the reporter? Where's that girl? Is she in this game? So, yeah, it's definitely probably one of the worst survival horror games on the Dreamcast. Sweet. And it's just because it not only does it not do anything really great, but it doesn't do it well. Anything that it tries to do that is, like, kind of innovative just comes off as kind of lame and cheesy. Like, so the idea that you go into a virtual world and you basically become a Matrix character, like, that's so stupid. Especially for the Ring. And why would she do that? This is the Ghost Lady's, like, powers creating a video game, and she's like, I really like the Matrix.
Right.
She's like, I really want to make a Matrix game. And you're like, are you sure? Oh, God. Keanu is so hot.
You're like, oh. She took the time and effort to make this Matrix video game that, like, takes people virtually in there. It's like, yeah. Too much.
She's like sitting at a computer. She's like, "Oh fuck, I gotta finish this game.
Wouldn't it be better
finish this?" And they're like, "What are you doing?" I'm developing a VR game. Just fucking wait. It takes a while. It's me. Oh my god, what if she had a Kickstarter?
She probably did.
She's like, "Help me finish my indie game. Hi, I died at the bottom of a well, and I was on those VHS tapes. But now I want to make a VR game that's like the Matrix. Can you help me make my dream come true?" And then we, like, news it, and then they, like, ghost everyone and take all the money. and never release the game.
Well,
it's
they
like,
actually.
I'm sorry, it's been very difficult.
You know what? She's a bad guy, but she's not an evil. So of course she did release the game. I mean, we're looking at it right now. So
the day one early bird tier gets you a $49 copy of the game with PAL box art. Oh, that's cool. That's fun. So do you think The Ring killed the developers' chances to continue as a game dev studio? Or do you think just releasing foreign movies was easier money and that's why they kind of cut their game division?
I mean, if I had got a contract with DreamWorks and they were it's like basically being doing stuff for Disney, right? Like if you're just translating stuff for Disney, you have a job forever. DreamWorks,
right.
I mean, DreamWorks is a tier studio in 3D movie making. I don't know where they're at right now compared to all that, but are they the ones that do the Minions movie, or is that another studio?
That's Illumination.
Okay, yeah, but isn't it published
But
by...
they did Puss in Boots.
Oh, Puss in Boots. Okay, that was a big movie. I've never seen it.
And I'm checking the Asmik Ace website right now. They are still around. It's a very boring website, so there's nothing really to see. But news, they had some new... It's one of those English language sites that doesn't really update.
Gotcha.
But I'm looking here. Yeah, so they're doing movie distribution, Codename Banshee. So they do more than just DreamWorks.
I think it's easier. I think making games is expensive. So wherever you can make your money, do it.
Yeah, they do a lot of just like film releasing. So, I mean, good on them. It's just a shame. I guess they're not making shitty games. But
right. You can only make so many shitty games, you know what I mean?
But thankfully, just like the VHS tape that spread like a virus, the Ring franchise did continue after the game released. In 2002, The Ring was adapted for American audiences by director Gore Verbinski in a film starring Naomi Watts and a score by Hans Zimmer.
Oh my god,
so that's,
he really did the soundtrack for this?
Yes, that's a glow up.
Yeah.
The film was a hit. It made $249 million off a budget of $48 million, making it one of the most successful horror remakes of all time. The plot is largely the same. They just move it to America and change the characters' names. The film kicked off its own franchise with 2005's The Ring 2, which was actually directed by Hideo Nakata, who directed the original Japanese Ring, and then 2017's Rings. And
with an S?
Yeah.
One ring. It's like the Lord of the Rings.
There's two rings. There's two one rings. There's a two ring.
So, why was it called Ring, though? Like, I understand the VHS tape. Why wasn't it called Haunted VHS or something? Why Ring?
Well, I think it's because you have to close the loop.
Oh. Okay.
So, as soon as you watch the film, you've started something. Gotcha. And in order to free yourself of it, you need to copy it to continue the cycle. Gotcha. So Ring is really about how there's this perpetual spreading of this haunted tape that never ends. Gotcha. And what's interesting is that this actually kicked off a whole Japanese horror remake like renaissance, because in 2004 The Grudge came out, and then in 2005 Darkwater, and I actually have a story about The Grudge. So I lived downtown Chicago for school, actually right next to the Gene Siskel Film Center.
Are you in it?
And I was in the movie. No. The U.S. premiere of the Japanese version actually took place in Chicago at that theater, and I was walking back to my apartment, and I look outside, there's this huge line, and I was like, What are you in line for? What's going on out here? And they're like, oh, did you see The Grudge? And I look over, and standing next to the entrance to the theater is this like super skinny old woman who's going like, and I think she was like actually just like living on the street. But I pointed at her talking to this random person. I was like, is that The Grudge? And they were super offended. They're like, no, it's a movie. that's not The Grudge. And I was like so confused. I went inside. I'm like, what the fuck's The Grudge? And I legit for like a day thought The Grudge was like slang for like a weird person on the street. Is that a good story? I don't know.
It's an offensive story that you
it's not offensive. So if you're going to go see a horror movie about like a weird deformed girl and there's like a weird woman standing right at the entrance going and that's The Grudge, because The Grudge is if you look at The Grudge is like hey, and I legitimately thought that was like a person dressed as like a character.
So The Grudge actually has a video game on the Wii, by the way. How does that?
Yeah.
Haunted House Simulator, though. I think they figured out their niche, right? Like
that's how you do it. Absolutely. And Darkwater, I know nothing about, but yeah. What's so? Last question before we get into Patreon memories, and I have a little video clip we can watch too.
To get copyright.
What is it? Yeah. Well, we'll see. We can mute it. What is it about Japanese and Asian horror in general that you think appeals to foreign audiences?
I don't know. I mean, I've never got into Japanese horror films. I think I'm unique in that. Like, I like a lot of Japanese stuff, but Japanese horror was never one where I was like, oh, guys, did you guys watch The Grudge? I think most of it because I felt it was a little like one-trick pony kind of in a way, because they always use the same idea of the girl with the long hair. Even The Grudge on the promotional materials really try to make it seem like it's The Ring kind of in a way. I also don't like, I noticed that they copied a lot. Like, I tried to watch a horror movie. I forgot what it was called, but it was like the same concept, but you read a text message and you die or something like that. And they're trying to solve it. So I'm like, I think they have some unique ideas and then they kind of like use them to death sometimes. And I think that's why personally I'm not into it. Maybe I need to watch more of them, but to make a judgment on the horror cinema. I haven't really been into horror movies in a really long time. I don't know about you. Do you watch a lot of horror movies still?
Not modern ones. I feel like since the pandemic, like horror movies have had a renaissance, and it's like in the theaters there's either a Marvel movie or a horror movie, and that's like your only options.
Did you know they have like a whole like streaming channel for like B tier horror movies, like that Shudder?
Yeah, I do. I actually thought about getting it. As far as like Japanese and Asian horror in general, I think the appeal is that it is unique from what America offers. I think in America, our horror, at least in the past like 20, 30 years, have been like either it's been predominantly men who have been wronged or corrupted, and they, like you said, well, yeah, and like you said, they're slashers, so they carry some sort of like grudge, with them, and they kill. And the whole thing is how creative can the kills get. But with Japanese horror, it seems to really be centered around tragedy and loss, and predominantly women who have been corrupted or injured or wronged. And I think probably coming from a predominantly, I don't mean to say predominantly male society, but like let's not, like the Japanese society is pretty sexist, right?
Right. I mean, I don't know. I've never been there, so I would have to be there. But I guess they're pretty conservative. Let's say that. Yeah,
and I mean, just the mere fact that the original book was like, and the worst of all,
she was intersex.
She was intersex, and it's like, okay.
Can you imagine if they change the story around and the doctor becomes the hero of the story? It's like,
yay! He killed her. But I think that's where it has this appeal, because it's something that we don't have over here. It's predominantly female focused. It's not about the creativity of the kills, but it's this like never ending, like you can't stop it. It happens kind of the same every time, and it's the fear really is when and where it's going to happen. And at least in terms of the Ring movies, the fun is, if there is fun to be had, in how these characters, like, learn what's happening to them. And so you're not like, oh, don't go around that corner. No, don't go make out in the cabin. You're gonna get stabbed in the head. It's more like, oh, they just watch the tape. No, don't turn the TV on. Ah, she's climbing out. So there's a little similarity there, but I think that's what it is, and I think culturally it also comes from that idea that there's like everything has a spirit. You know what I mean?
Right.
So you see that in marketing, like everything has a mascot. Like it's like, oh, it's the umbrella mascot, and then the umbrella cover mascot, and then the mushroom mascot, and the condom mascot. Like everything is personified. And in this case, I think these I don't want to call them villains, but these like creatures in these Japanese horror movies are imprints of something that happened to someone. They're not literally the person, but they're almost like a spirit of drowning, or the spirit of sexual abuse, or the spirit of holding a grudge against someone, or the spirit of drowning. So it's like they inflict what hurt them onto other people.
She killed the doctor, right? Like, the doctor gets its upcomings. It's not like the doctor lived a peaceful life and never gets mentioned again. He gets to live with his family until his...
I hope not.
Okay.
But, yeah.
She does kill, like, a bunch of random people, so, I mean, how good of a person is she? I get the revenge.
But she's not a person, and I don't think it is revenge. I think it's these terrible things happen to her, and now it perpetuates.
Got you.
And there's no way of stopping it because it's like a virus, And I think there's probably some commentary there too about abuse and murder, and how it will never end. It'll always happen to somebody, unfortunately. Mm-hmm. And so I think at least maybe the original novel and the original film were kind of a commentary on that, how you can't stop it because it's something that's ingrained in society, unfortunately, and in the human condition. And so the only way to have it not affect you is to perpetuate it, I guess. I don't know.
Wow, what a message.
What a message. So let's end on a happy note. I actually have a clip here. It starts at 2 minutes 15.
Okay, I got it up. It's Scary Movie 3, a classic. It's almost, I think it's almost as classic, the Scary Movie franchise, as Fast and the Furious. It's like Americana.
Oh, yeah.
All right, I'm going to play it.
Yeah, and I remember this released when I was working on a movie theater, and this scene, like, cracked people up. This was, like, the favorite scene.
Oh, I watched these movies in theater, one of them in theaters, and everyone cracked up the whole...
They're good. Like, the Anna Faris and Regina Hall, they do a great job.
Oh, yeah.
So, I mean, they really nail the special effects, too. Like, it looks like it's straight out of the Ring movie.
Oh, yeah.
But then the ridiculousness is, of course, the fact that, well, we'll see. Like emptying the water out of the ear. And...
Wow.
Yeah. And I think Scary Movie 3 was also like a Scream parody too. I could be wrong.
I think, I think this is the one that has like the Home Alone scene, kind of with
right. But then, yeah, they're punching and headbutting. And, like, wouldn't you do this? Like, wouldn't you try to fight the creature?
I think this is something we all think when we watch these movies. Like, come on, Freddy is like a skinny, like, 160-pound, burnt-up old dude. Right?
Oh, that's the... Scary Movie 3 had this alien from Signs, too. That's what it was.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'll have to rewatch those. Those are good movies.
It's funny that, like, the horror movie boom in the 2000s made the Scary Movies franchise, and then that franchise made a bunch of other crappy franchises that try to be like them, but, like, really, really terrible versions.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, before we close things up, let's hear from our Patreon community. We have one memory here from Ben Hayward. And Ben has this to say. I've never played this game. I've never seen any of the movies, but I did have a Sega Bits dream last night.
What?
Where I went shopping for a TV with a built-in Dreamcast, and Barry and George were there.
Oh, shit.
And I woke up, and then I see that a new episode is cooking. Looking forward to listening. Well, that's kind of creepy, because I had that dream too, but when we turned the TV on, like, it said we had 7 days to live. And when did... Oh, no, George, he posted this 6 days ago.
Uh-oh.
Ben. So what Ben has to do, actually, is get 7 of his friends to support us on Patreon.
And then the curse will be lifted.
And then the curse will be lifted. So, yeah, if you're watching this episode, you've actually been cursed as well. Jump on over to Patreon, give us $1 a month, and you won't... I don't want to say you won't die, but you won't stub your toe.
Ooh.
You don't want to do that.
And what are we covering next? What am I covering the next time? Is there another Patreon pick, or am I able to pick one?
You can pick, George.
Oh my God! Well, I'm gonna have to think about it then. I can't give it up. I have to.
It'll be a surprise.
I want to do a weird episode. So like, I'm thinking of something. So something not a game, maybe. We'll see.
What the fuck? What else is there?
I mean, there's other stuff of Sega that
controllers.
We're gonna be talking about Sega Crocs.
Bits. Oh, okay.
Or Sega.
Oh, like Vector the Crocodile.
Right. You got it. All this and more on the next Sega Talk. Bye. See you guys next time.
You're dead.
Bye. 7
Bye.
days.